This is an intro to Valley MLS support and compliance. It is not just for admin and assistants, but it is going to be geared specifically towards those of you that are admin and assistants. So if you hear me switching back and forth talking about your listing, just know I'm obviously referring to your agent's listing or your broker's listings. We kind of view their work as our work, I think, a lot of times anyway. So we're just going to let that happen. Yeah, thank you all so much for being here. So I am going to talk a lot. I love this class. I have a passion for admin and support people. I happen to think that you all make the world go round. And I do, maybe a little bit biased because I do come from that perspective. When I came into this job, I brought that with me and kind of started asking, why aren't we targeting the assistants? Because, you guys really do support our members, and it's kind of this little niche of membership that we weren't really addressing. So staff and leadership has really jumped on board with it and been supportive of bringing you guys into the fold, and encouraged me to create this class. And so I do love it, and I love teaching it. I haven't done it for a while because I've been struggling with a bit of a voice issue. So if my voice starts to falter, do forgive me, but we're going to try to power through it. So again, I'm going to talk a lot. Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one, because I will not see you raise your hand. I've got you all over here. Most of you are camera off anyway, but again, this is really a conversation. So I am going to really plug through because there's a lot to cover, but I don't want that to seem like I'm not willing to stop and address what you need addressed. So just want to say that up front. So the purpose of this class is to introduce office admin and assistants to our MLS support and compliance department in an effort to help better educate all of our members and keep listings in compliance with the rules and the regs. And as I said before, it is geared specifically towards admin and assistants. But if you were to ask me to teach this class, a compliance class for agents and brokers, it would be very similar. I would just be, maybe addressing you a little differently or whatever, but all of the same information still applies. So if you're in here as an agent or a broker, please know you're going to come away with some valuable stuff also. And you may decide you want an admin or an assistant to help you because they're great. So first off, just kind of get a couple of these little, I'm sorry. Sorry, I thought I heard a question. Huntsville Area Association of Realtors, HAR, does own Valley MLS, but not all Valley members are HAR members, and some of you may not know that. So I work for Valley MLS and its members. So you may be a member of the Huntsville Area Association of Realtors, or you may be from Morgan County or Limestone or one of those other outlying areas that are still very valuable to us as members, but we are owned by the Huntsville Area Association of Realtors. So we are in that same building. People often will refer to all of us as the board. The board is actually an elected body of members, in case you didn't know that. And Valley has a board this year, and HAR has a board. So it gets a little confusing sometimes the way people talk about it. And I wanted to just clear that up. And part of the reason I bring that up is as we get into the rules, I do want you guys to appreciate that these are decided on, voted on, and approved by the member boards, that, the people that were elected by membership to be the leaders. And therefore, my role as staff and all of us here is not to make these rules or even interpret them. It is actually just to apply them fairly and equally. And so that's what we try to do. And we're just going to kind of jump in here talking about what the MLS department is for a little bit, and then we'll get into compliance specifically. Before we do get started on that, I want to mention one more thing about the kind of the new things we're doing with assistants and admin. And one thing is we have a mailing list now that is specifically for you as an assistant or an office administrator. So I would encourage you to, if you are not on that list, to email Sean, S-E-A-N, Sean, at valleymls.com and let him know you would like to be on that list. You will get updates and, kind of bulletins or whatever like the agents do, so that you're not waiting to hear from them that something has changed, but instead that the information is in your hands so that you can help support them and know what they need to know. So I think that's one of the most valuable changes that we've made in terms of the assistance. So I'm going to, I guess, stop here briefly and just make sure nobody has any questions. And I guess we're good. So the membership department, or excuse me, not the membership department, the MLS department is separate from the membership department. When you first join HAR or Valley, you're going to be dealing with the ladies in our membership department who get you all set up. But then the member support, when it actually comes to dealing with Paragon, dealing with the MLS, that actually comes into my department, the MLS department. So we are here to help you. We want you to call, email us with questions. If you have those, the email is mlssupport@valleymls.com. The 2 S's in a row does throw people, but it's mlssupport@valleymls.com. I will be sending a resource guide for with a lot of this information and some of these email addresses and phone numbers and things like that at the end. I'm going to very quickly silence my cell phone because it keeps bothering me. All right, so again, member support, that's a really big part of what we do. So please know if you have a question, if the agent has a question, if the broker has a question, please do call us. If we don't know, we will do our best to find out or direct you to the right place. The Paragon system itself, we do work a lot with that and trying to optimize that for you. So if you run into issues, if there's something that doesn't work the way you feel like it should, or it just seems needlessly confusing, bring that up. I mean, the only way that we fix anything or make it better is when people tell us how they use it and what it's not doing for them. Doesn't mean we can solve every problem. Frustratingly, the system does have boundaries that we can't go outside of, but we do our best, and it's great. I mean, I think on a weekly basis we're updating something or changing just one little tweak here and there to make it more meaningful and useful. So please do take advantage of us for that. So I'm going to do a quick screen share here, and we're going to look at the dashboard. Can everyone see the dashboard? I think you're nodding. Okay. So pull this over here. So this is the Clarity dashboard. You don't have to know the word Clarity, but I do want you to know that this is the dashboard. We kind of have a jargon problem in this industry. Some of you may have already experienced this, where your broker is asking you to bring them the HUD, and we haven't used a document called the HUD in some years. They really mean a settlement statement or maybe even a closing disclosure. The selling agent, of course, doesn't represent the seller. They represent the buyer. And I know that confused me a great deal in the beginning when I first started in this business. So it's just really important for us to start with like terms we all understand. So this is the dashboard. And when you log in using the credentials that you were given, this is where you land. And some of you, if you're assistants, you may be assuming an identity from this level, and others of you most of you probably are clicking into Paragon actually before you assume an identity. But this is the dashboard here. When we click on the Paragon button, it's going to open hopefully into Paragon. Can everyone see Paragon? Did that switch for you? Okay. So this is your Paragon homepage. Sometimes people will call and they'll talk about the dashboard and they think this is the dashboard, or they'll talk about the homepage and they're actually referring to the dashboard. So I just want to make that, it's just helpful when you call and you have a question, if we know where you're starting from and if we know from where you assume identity. So for those of you that do assume an identity, you come in here to Paragon, you come up to your name, you can choose assume identity. One of the cool things about being me is I can literally be any of you. So that's kind of neat. But you'll just have the people up there that you obviously have been given permission to assume. So let's talk about Paragon briefly. This is the database of the software basically that we use for the MLS. It is hosted by a company called Black Knight. So you may sometimes see information being given to you from Black Knight, but it's in reference to the Paragon software. So don't let that throw you. For all intents and purposes, in my mind, Paragon and Black Knight are the same thing, which I know isn't true because they have other products. But for me and you, that's really what we need to know. Paragon training is available if any of you are struggling with this. I do want to touch on a couple of things really quickly, but that isn't the focus of this class. So we're not going to do a deep dive on Paragon. But I do want to introduce you to some of the searches because not everybody understands the different searches that we have and the value that they bring. So yes. Did someone say Teddy? No. Okay. So the quick search over here on the left, which by the way, this is all modular. I didn't know this for a long time, but I can actually move this if I wanted to, but I don't because I'm a creature of habit. This quick search here, you can enter a lot of basic information if you're looking for a range on a certain street or, you know, statuses in a zip code. I don't utilize quick search a whole lot, to be honest. So I can't give you a great idea of what it's very useful for, but it's there if you need it. Usually I use it when Powersearch fails me. And that's what we're going to talk about next, which is up here at the top. You may be working with agents who've been in this business for 15 years and don't even know that the search box is here. For some reason, they just don't see it. For whatever reason, I started using this search right away inside of Paragon. And when I came to Valley in this position a couple years ago, it was funny to me that none of the staff here ever utilized it because to me, it's such a valuable search. So in Powersearch, you can start typing in an MLS number, for instance, and it is going to, if my internet keeps up, offer us some examples. I didn't put in a whole one, so it's trying to give me all the MLS numbers that start with those, with that. I'm going to pick on Tara because she has an unusual last name and we can get her up really quickly. If we type in Tara Schmid, we'll see that it's offering us, look at that, it's offering us members, all the members that start with Tara. A Tara Drive is also here because it wasn't really sure what we wanted. And it's going to offer us 10 listings, 10 members, 10 contacts, whatever it can find that matches what you're typing in, it's going to try to offer that to you. So if you've got an MLS number that you're looking for specifically and you want to go right to that one, come to Powersearch, type that in. It's just going to immediately offer it to you and bring up the agent full. If you ever have something that isn't populating in Powersearch for some reason, that's when I come to quick search because for whatever reason, there's a little bug every once in a while where something isn't showing in Powersearch, but very rare. And I do love that search. So we'll delete Tara out of there. Your regular search is going to be right here. Mine is a tree. Yours is going to look however you customize it in your preferences. And you can choose by class which one you'd like to search. This, the only reason I'm actually even showing you this is to show you two things. One, that it's completely customizable. We have this customize button here where you can add fields. So if there's a particular piece of information your client is interested in and it's not on your search, let's say it's, you know, very important to them that it's also zoned commercial for whatever reason. You can click this commercial zone, yes or no. You hit add. It brings it over here. It's going to drop it all the way at the bottom, but I don't want it at the bottom because it's the only thing I'm interested in right now. So I'm really going to grab it and drag it right to the top. Maybe right here under status is where I want that to be. And so then when I hit apply, I'm actually going to just hit apply because I don't want to save this permanently. But if you do, you can see you have save options. But in this case, I'm only going to hit apply just to show you what it does. And it literally just reloads that with commercial zone, yes or no right here. And now for all my clients who want a commercial zone property, I can specifically only include things that have been marked yes in this field. The other thing I want to point out to you on this search, if we scroll down, and mine might look a little different than yours. There are schools. Oh, look, mine are not all on here. Mine hasn't updated to the default because I have one saved. But I do want to point out, and when you look at your search, you may see something different because we did update the default search based on the data share. We're going to talk about that later, but the data share is the residential listings that are coming over from the Birmingham market, the greater Alabama MLS. And because of the way their subdivisions and their schools map, we have had to create different search fields so that you guys can see each other's listings in a meaningful way. So I'm actually going to scroll up just to this subdivision field and show you. It's the same thing with schools now that you'll see here. So you probably only have one subdivision field on your search. I don't know which one you have, but what I can tell you is that for a long time, the only one that existed was the subdivision where it says equals at the end, and you can change to not equal to. And in this subdivision field, if I start typing something in, it is going to offer me a pick list. I have to choose. What Hampton do you want? Do you want specifically Hampton Hills? Do you want Hampton Manor? If it's not showing me the one I want, I can hit the magnifying glass. I can type that Hampton again, and you'll see I have a bunch of choices for what Hampton I want. But here's the problem. Let's say in our MLS, Hampton Court is entered this way, fully spelled out Hampton Court, and that's what I choose. I say, I want you to show me Hampton Court. But in the listing that they put in DataShare, they don't spell it Hampton Court. They spell it Hampton CT, an abbreviation for court. Well, very literal computers are not going to find them. So that's why we had to create this other field. So I hope that you're following and that you understand what I'm getting at. Because here, again, we're looking for Hampton Court specifically, spelled out. Down here, I don't know how you have it. I'm going to look for anything that has Hampton in it. This is going to be a big one because there's a lot of Hamptons. But I also didn't put a status in. I'm going to put in active to help limit our search results here. By the way, always choose active and not all active, even though it wants to give that to you. All active tends to throw your search off, especially if you're going to be sharing the results. So in this case, I'm going to be looking for anything that contains Hampton. If I take out the other one, I have active listings that contain Hampton, and I get 7. If I pull that up, we're going to have to actually click in because I don't have subdivisions visible. But we have Hampton Manor, Hampton Place. I'm going to pause briefly on this listing to point out that this is a Birmingham listing. This is from Greater Alabama. The shorthand for that is that it starts with a 2. 281. That means it's not one of ours. We're 179. We just bumped over into 180s. So we're starting with 1s, and the Greater Alabamas right now are starting with a 2. The other thing to note, however, is right here. I'm going to circle it with my mouse. The originating system name shows us Greater Alabama MLS. Also has an originating listing ID. This is important because if you have a client that brings a listing to you, let's say they've seen it elsewhere, Zillow, Realtor.com, somewhere like that, and they have an MLS number, you will not be able to find it by typing that MLS number into the Powersearch if it's a Birmingham listing, because we assign them a new MLS number, this one up here that starts with a 2. But in their system and wherever they're sending their listings out to, their MLS number is going to be this one right here. So going back to our search, I'm just going to click back over here to criteria. You can see down here, we do have originating listing ID and originating system name on your search. So if I'm looking for a Birmingham listing and I know what their MLS number is from their system, I can type that right here, originating listing ID. That's probably an important thing for you to note. Also, the originating system name, if for whatever reason you are working with someone who doesn't want to see listings out of Birmingham, remember they do sometimes have listings in our market, even though they're coming from their MLS. But if you do want to exclude those because you don't like their listings or it's just too much to look at or whatever, you can come down here and type in which originating system you would like to look at, and you can just then only see the ones you want. So that's those there. And then just back to our results, you can see here, again, I knew right away looking at that that was not going to be from our area. But really what I wanted to show you is that we have Hampton Place. We also have Hampton Station, Southampton Place, Hampton Cove, Cobblestone Cove. And that is because we used the contains field. We did not choose a subdivision. We asked for it to look for any subdivisions that contained the word Hampton. You can get more specific. I could have typed in Hampton Cove and it would have only given me things that said Hampton Cove. But I did want to point out the way those two searches, or those two fields, I should say, are different. And you will also now see most likely the schools are the same way, elementary, middle, and high, not intermediate. But elementary, middle school, high school, all of these have an equals to, not equals to box. We have now added the contains search for all of those schools as well. I like to have them together. Some people prefer to use one or the other. It's completely a preference, but a great thing to note here, because it happened to me too, is I have a saved search. This is the search I have saved as my residential search. I've customized it. So that means when, as staff, the MLS defined search was updated, mine wasn't, because I'm not using that. I'm using my saved search. So I point that out because there are fields that may become available that won't immediately populate into your search if you're using a saved one. I feel like I've said the word search 1,000 times. Excuse me. The last search I want to show you is going to be an inventory search. And I actually have a sheet I'll send to you at the end. We aren't going to go over this too much in depth because I do have a resource guide. But this is a really helpful search, and I'm surprised the number of brokers who don't utilize it on the office level, because I know when I worked in an office, I was pulling this search daily, weekly, if not daily. You can come in here, you'll notice it defaults to all of the actives, which is active, temporarily off market, which is technically an active status, believe it or not. Office exclusive, provisional, and coming soon. They all just populate here as though actives are all you're interested in. I am actually going to suggest to you that the most valuable use of this search does not involve active statuses at all, but instead pending and contingent.
Oh, no.
Someone has some background noise happening. If you wouldn't mind muting your microphone.
There's spooging everywhere.
I don't know who
I talked to, apparently it was Lisa Jordan.
Let's see if we can figure out where that noise is coming.
It sounded.
Oh, Lisa Jordan, we talked to you.
Okay, well, that's not who, I don't think that's who I talked to today. It sounded like the same person yesterday.
Okay.
But maybe not. Anyway, 22nd is the targeting date after talking therapy. They said, no, we're not ready to.
I apologize. I don't.
Still working at the 22nd. Just a week next. Okay.
Teresa, can you hear me? I'm trying to mute you, and I'm having, for some reason, I'm having trouble with my controls. It doesn't want to let me do that. Thank you so much. Okay, so back to inventory search. I'm going to suggest here that if you have an office that has pending or contingent listings and you are trying to keep track of those, this is a great way to do that. You'll notice for me, it does default here to your own listings. I only have one. It's just a test fake listing. Obviously, I don't really have listings, but for me, I can change this to a bunch of things. You'll be able to change it if you're assuming at the broker level, or you are a broker. You can change it to my office's listings. You can change it to another agent's listings and choose the, an agent from your office that you would like to see what they have going on. I'm going to go back to my listings just for the example here. We're going to hit search. This is just going to bring up all of my pendings and contingents. I only have this one. You can see it's well past its projected closing date. Someone needs to update this listing. This is custom though, and that's really the reason I wanted to show you inventory search, because unlike listing maintenance, one of my biggest pet peeves, to be honest, is when you go to listings, maintain listings, and you bring up your spreadsheet view, it's not customizable. You have what you have. You can only see what's there, and you don't get any options. And I hate that. Everything else is so customizable in the system, I don't even understand it. But that's where inventory search comes into play. You can see that I have chosen the customized fields, and I have added down here a projected closing date. I have days on market, status date, expiration, also projected completion date, because these are dates that are meaningful to me. projected closing date especially is meaningful in a pending and contingent status. So if you have a lot of listings you're trying to keep track of, keep up with those projected closing dates, this is the search, inventory search, that you want to use. So that's one way to use it. I'm going to go back to the criteria very quickly and delete out the statuses, and I'm going to put in solds. Now, I don't have any solds, so it's going to be a little less meaningful. However, if you're wanting to see how many deals you've done this year or in your entire lifetime in MLS that have gone through the MLS, to me, this is more meaningful than statistics. Maybe it won't be to you, but what we can do is say, I want to see my solds. I'm going to leave it as my own listings. Don't let that confuse you, because it's going to give you both sides, selling or listing, because we're going to tell it to. When we come down to selling / listing, it defaults to just listed, but I can actually change it to listed or sold. So again, for me, that's going to be 0. But this is going to be anything that the system gives you or your agent credit for on the listing side or the selling side. And if it happens that they are on both sides of one transaction, just bear in mind it will only show it once, because it's literally bringing up the listing. It's showing you the property, not necessarily the transaction. So it'll bring up a list of everything you've done. If you want to just only have a certain date range, you come down here to the close date and you put the range that you want. I do recommend actually entering the dates and not using the date range buttons. I just don't trust them. So that's inventory search. I am going to send you a sheet about that to kind of touch what we talked about here, but also if there are a couple other little things on there that you may find valuable. So that'll be coming to you. I'm going to jump into compliance now, because that's really our main focus. If anyone has any questions about Paragon or the searching, please email those to me or call me. We'll talk them through. Not a problem at all. Compliance. All right, now we've gotten to the thing that I don't want to say is my favorite part of my job, because it makes it sound like I like to be a hard nose, but to me, I love to put just all the little pieces together. And so compliance has become a passion of mine, because I'm really trying to make sure the rules are clear, that they make sense, that everybody who looks at them knows what they are, that they're readily available to you. That's the part that I'm really passionate about, not so much the tut, we're going to have to fine you for that. Nobody likes to fine people. It's actually my least favorite part of my job. But I do want to point out, like I said, these rules are approved by the member boards who vote on them, and that means they change. So you have to stay aware of changes. And again, get on that mailing list for the admin if you're not on it. If you're not an admin, then please do read the emails that come out, because we do announce those things in the agent and broker emails, especially from valley-mls.com. That's where those rules are housed, where they live, and those are really important when you see those. Also, form updates. If you see we've updated a form, please make sure that your agent and your office are using the most up-to-date form. If you have templated loops and dot loop that you're using, please make sure you update those templates so that they are getting the most up-to-date forms whenever they use those. So let's talk about where to find the rules and regulations. We're right here on Paragon. So we're going to go back to the home page. You can see we have different tabs here that it's opened for us. And so I'm just going to literally click back over to home. Right here in the middle where it says valley-mls.com, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you how long I worked in a brokerage office without knowing you can scroll down right here, but you can. There are some headlines here. Obviously, we had our announcement for the compliance class for today was here. Some other things going on. Excuse me, the stats will cycle through. We have some resources. But really what I wanted to show you was this. This is where the rules and regulations live. Often people say they don't know where to find them, or they don't know that they're available to them, and they are right here. So if we click on this box, it will open as a PDF inside of our browser. This is a 62-page document. So unless you're looking for some bedtime reading, I don't necessarily expect anybody's going to sit down and read through it. However, it is where, the actual letter of the law, if you will, is written. So it's a great resource if you know what you're looking for, especially. There is the, good old-fashioned table of contents here is always helpful. But you can also hit, as a function of your browser, if you hit Control F on an Apple, I'm not sure what the control button is. I think it's the one that looks like the little squiggle square squiggly thing. If you hit that with an F, it brings up a finder box. And in this finder box, we can type in a keyword. Let's say I want to look for the owner name rule for whatever reason. You can see I've got 60 results with owner. Maybe I want to add the word name, and that helps. Okay, it's showing me the first result there in the table of contents, and then I can click through these little arrows and it goes down through, in this case, just back and forth to where it's going to find that rule. Here is where it lists the rule that yes, you do have to have the full name of your owner on every MLS residential listing. And it also lists the exceptions to that. The exception number 1 is if it's a relocation company and they opt out of that. And the next exception is a relatively new exception that was written in, allowing for rental class listings to not have this information, which makes sense. You're not usually dealing directly with an owner on a listed rental property. So that's how you search that. And again, 62 pages, not maybe super user friendly. But if we come back here and click on the penalty policy, then we will see, yes, it does tell you about fines and about how the rules are applied. But the most important thing, and the reason I like to tell people to come here, is it has this great chart. And it's not every rule that you could break, but if it made the chart, then people have broken it enough that it made the chart. So read through this. Just take note of the things that are on here on the left. It does give you details in the middle to explain that, but you can then take it back to the rules, search for that, and read the actual rule if you feel like you need to. And also, just because we're here, I'll point out that the fines do escalate. They start at $100, most of them, for what's considered a Category 1 violation. A second offense is $250, and a third offense is $500, as well as a trip to the compliance committee to discuss the repeated violations. Mostly it is about accountability, but it's also about how can they help? What systems do you need to get in place to avoid continuing to make that that error? Because excuse me, in case you're unaware, the crux of an MLS, the point of us, is cooperation and compensation, but cooperation comes first among members. And part of that cooperation is agreeing to abide by the set of rules and everybody following them the same. So that's really what the penalty policy is about. It is not a revenue generating stream for us by any means. It's just about keeping the playing field level and fair. So scroll down through Category 1. These are all great pieces of information to have. And then I'll point out we do jump up into Category 2 and Category 3. I'm going to jump ahead actually on my guide since we're already here and talk about this. There are a couple of large fines. Not a lot of them are things that you need to be aware of on a regular basis. Things like copyright violation and violating MLS of choice. These are not things you're going to have to worry about too much. Sharing a lockbox key, you want to be aware of when you can and cannot do that. We have data. This is IDX or VOW. This is going to relate to our data feed. So if you're a vendor who's receiving a data feed, this could potentially apply to you. Down into Category 3, however, are the two really I wanted to point out: the coming soon and the temporarily off market policies. If you are violating the temporarily off market policy in one of two ways, either showing or marketing in that status, it is a $1,000 fine. And if you are showing a property incoming soon, it's a $1,000 fine, and it does escalate to $2,000 if it were to happen again. There are two other tenets of the temporarily off market policy that have smaller fines attached. One is that you do have to get a listing change notice signed by your seller and attach it to the listing itself, in the same way that you have to do that with a coming soon addendum. And if you didn't know that you had to do that, we can also talk about that. But these are two special statuses that do have special policies. I would encourage you all to go to har.realtor at some point, click on the education tab, and select MLS compliance if you'd like to read through those policies in full. In the temporary off market policy specifically, we do send a courtesy notice. We're going to talk about courtesy notices up next here. That in an attempt to make sure that everyone who uses temporarily off market understands this is not just paused. This is a special listing status. It has a limited time frame, 30 days only, that you can use it. The system will make it active again on its own at the end of 30 days. Unfortunately, it will also let you take it back into that status, which would be a violation and something that would result in a fine. Luckily, only $100 and not $1,000, but you want to be aware of these special things if you're going to be using that policy. So just kind of moving on, we're going to switch back to, I'm going to switch over to data checker now. We're going to talk about this one. And here we are in data checker. This doesn't mean a whole lot to you guys, but I am in here every day. This is the back end of the violation system. Essentially, this is our compliance software. And I do want to tell you there are two different ways that something ends up here. It can either be flagged automatically by the system. It's very good at catching specific things like promotional information in the public remarks, which you're not allowed to do, by the way. It can catch a listing of an invalid source of square footage pretty well, because we've told it to flag certain phrases and certain things in the listing. Other things it's not good at catching. So if it is automatically caught, it goes into what's called my new bucket. You can see right now I have 11 that the system is waiting on me to process. I actually have to look with my eyes and process those through. It's also catching past projected closing date, which it's not asking me to look at. Because we have actually fully automated that one, thank goodness. And we'll get to why that's a thank goodness in a second. The other way that listings come here is an agent reported violation. So I'm going to switch quickly back to Paragon and show you that. We are going to just pick on some poor individual who, well, maybe not, I don't have any listings up, who does not have a violation. We're just going to grab a listing so I can show you. Most of you will default when you go into a listing to the agent full report, which is this one. If this is not what you're seeing, you can come over here to the green reports button and you can actually switch views in case you didn't know that. This is agent full 2022, and that's the MLS defaults, just FYI. So when we're looking at a listing, we've got a lot of information here, but the one I want to point out is under these little buttons for the history and the map, there's also this little house with a check mark. And the house with the check mark is the data checker report it button. So if you click that, it's going to then offer you some options, I think. There we go. You can check one of these boxes. You can just say the status needs to be updated, that there's prohibited information in a public field. There's a sign in the photo. My system cannot catch that, by the way. You're not allowed to have signage in your photos, in your listing photos, but I only will know that if I see it or someone flags it to us, because the system is not looking at the photos to that degree and can't catch that. If you think there's a fair housing violation, if it's missing an owner name, that's very common. So we made this a checkbox so you can just click it. These last two, you do have to fill in a little something or we won't know what you're actually reporting. But once you do that and you click submit, that will then go into that listing data checker software for me to look at. And it drops right in here into the report it new, which I don't see. There we go. Oh, I have 11 of those too. So that's just kind of how the system works from my end. And I wanted you to know that, yes, some things are caught automatically, some things are caught only manually. And most of the time it's really about getting the listing corrected more than anything else. But let's talk about the violation notices. There are 3 levels of violation notice. And I'm going to try to give you a new view here to show you the courtesy notice. So this is a courtesy notice. I hope you can see that. If you get one of these, it's going to go to 3 places. All of these notices we're talking about are going to go to 3 places. They're going to go to the listing agent. They're going to go to that agent's broker. They will go to an office email if we have an email on file for the office. We don't always have one, but if we do, it also goes there. So 3 places it will go automatically. If you as an assistant or if you as an agent have an assistant that would like to be added to that list, we are able to add email addresses. I can't take any away. They're going to go to those 3 places always, but I can add your email for the whole office. I can add your email for a specific agent, either one. And that way, instead of them getting a notice and then forwarding it to you, you can just be aware of that, especially if you're like a TC who is in charge of keeping up that listing maintenance. It may be really valuable for you to be getting these notifications as well. So please email me at the end if you have any questions about that or want to get added. We can go ahead and get that done. So on this notice, I guess I'll start at the top. It does say courtesy notice, and it will say that in the subject as well. You also might see a first notice, which means it's asking for correction. You could see a fine notice, which is a correction was asked for and wasn't made. Or you will see an immediate fine notice, which is exactly what it sounds like. A fine has already been hit or has already hit your account. There is something that you need to fix maybe, but there's already a fine in place. So starting with the courtesy, sometimes people get these and think, oh no, what did I do? And if you have a question, just hit reply. Ask the question. It comes back to us. Usually I'm the one that answers it. And I'm happy to explain what's going on or what needs to happen. If it's a temporarily off market listing, the courtesy notice is really just automatic. You're going to get one, again, warning you there are things that you need to know about this. Sometimes it is a courtesy asking a question. An example I had from this week was someone had indicated the zip code was incorrect in a listing. And I sent a courtesy notice asking the listing agent to verify the zip code. And she replied back saying, yes, that zip code is correct. And so it wasn't something she needed to correct. I just wasn't sure if it needed to be corrected or not. So that was a courtesy notice. But all of them are the same in that when you scroll down through, there's going to be a box down here. I do want to mention that this please click here. I wish that was more meaningful. Sometimes it will be if it's a system generated violation. Clicking here will show you in red what's wrong in the listing. If it was manually caught, clicking there is just going to be frustrating because you won't see anything. So really here inside this box is what's important. It's going to give you the MLS number, which is also in the subject of the email. It's going to give you the address of the property, the violation type, if there is one. And then in this, what you're seeing here under notes, which is kind of a big blank space, if I have added a note, I will do it in red. Most likely I try to bold them and make them in red so that they jump out. And this is where I will put the information I'm trying to convey to you or my question or whatever. So just know that that's how you read a compliance notice. And again, this is the courtesy notice, but they all do essentially look the same. It's just what it says at the top. Is it a courtesy? Is it a, courtesy notice, review your listing for compliance? Or it would say, first notice, there's a correction that needs to be made. And anytime, please reply back to these if you would like to, just to let me know you've corrected it or to ask a question or whatever. But please do not try to copy and paste the email address into another email. That will not work. It will not get to me. You won't know it didn't get to me. It'll just go out into the ether and be lost forever. So we don't want to do that. So just running through quickly some examples of courtesy notices you might receive. You might be asked to verify info. You might be asked for a source of your square footage. We do audit for that information. Just FYI, you cannot use tax records or previous listings as a source of square footage. And now, very recently, you can no longer use plans and specs unless you are a proposed or under construction listing or new, never occupied. If this is 1 to 5 years old or any older than that, plans and specs is no longer considered valid. Someone does have to measure the property. So just keep that in mind. And if we do ask for that source of square footage, it'll come via a courtesy notice square footage audit. And you can just reply back to that and attach whatever measurements you have. I joke around that they can be drawn on the back of a bar napkin. I don't care. It just needs to match the source you've selected. And you can only select a valid source. So just remember, you cannot say see remarks and then put something in your remarks that's invalid. If it's not in the drop down to choose from, it's not a source you can use. So just note that. Moving on from that, we're going to switch back our view here to listing data checker. I do want to talk about immediate fines. Again, they must be corrected, but there's no grace period. You're going to have a fine on your account. If there was a mistake on our end, obviously we'll remove that. But otherwise, just note on the penalty policy, where we were looking through that earlier. If I can find that, I'll switch over here. some of these in bold say this is an immediate fine. This is an immediate fine. There are only about a handful here. Public remarks is a big one. Anything that's in a public field that isn't supposed to be there is probably going to be an immediate fine, because once it gets released out into the internet, the horse is out of the barn and we can't get it back. So we can change it, we can update it in the feed and it will refresh, but anything that's been cached or stored or whatever, it already happened. So those fines are immediate, and just be aware of those, please, because I hate surprising people with that stuff. Signage and photo is another one. Motivated seller is another one. Again, that's a term people feel like they've heard and it's comfortable. My seller's very motivated. Motivated seller. We have a rule that says you can't say that. And I mean, you can ask me why if you want, but I don't know. The answer is just we have a rule that says you can't. So just be aware of those, please. And lastly, correctable violations. Most common for sure. You get 3 days to correct before you'll get a fine notice. In most cases, you're still not going to get fined after that fine notice. It's just, we really want you to correct the listing before it's closed out. If it does get too far and it can't, something that can't be corrected, you know, because it's closed, or if too much time has passed and we haven't gotten anything back, like, you know, there's no maintenance on the listing at all, fines can be imposed for correctable violations as well, but we really try to avoid it. And a great example of that is past projected closing dates. So if I find every single person that went more than 3 days past their projected closing date, I would never do anything else. So we do have a policy here in place that past the fine notice, you get an additional grace period. And therefore, if you get a first notice and you don't notice that, and then you get a fine notice, think, oh crap, because usually fine gets people's attention, and then you go in and correct it. It is not too late on that particular violation, especially before a invoice is ever generated. Human eyes, usually mine, go through each listing to see if it was corrected in the time frame that was allowable. And you know, it takes a little time, which is why the invoicing system does run a little bit behind. It takes about 4 weeks usually to get an invoice from a fine notice. So also be aware of that. The fine notice and the invoice are not the same thing. Just because you have a fine notice is not 100% guaranteed you have a fine. But if you get an invoice, or your agent receives an invoice and they ask you about it, yes, they have to pay it. That is not, there's nothing ambiguous about that. And if they have a question or a concern, they absolutely should call or reply back, and we'll talk about it. Also be aware that every member is entitled to a one-time only waiver on fines of $100. So if you have a new agent or somebody that just has never taken advantage of that before, please be aware that if they receive an invoice for a fine of $100, they can always request to waive that, and everybody gets one. So if you've already used it ever, then you don't get to do it again. I do, maybe one day we'll put a little time frame on that where they kind of start over, but for right now, it's just one. So anyway, other correctable violations include owner name. Yes, we do need that. Initials don't count. Full name, please. Yes, you will also notice on Birmingham listings, they do not have owner names. And again, it's going to be a difference between their rules and ours, but in our system, you do have to have that. Status rules are correctable. There are a lot of people are putting in room dimensions that are invalid. The system will allow you to put in 0 by 0 or 1 by 1, but that's not valid. And you are required to have room dimensions, meaningful, valid room dimensions for rooms 1, 2, and 3, and then every additional bedroom. So just also note that. You've probably noted already that room 1 can only be the living room, the family room, or the great room. That's locked in. You have to choose one of those 3, and that's all you can choose. Room 2 is your kitchen. Room 3 is your master bedroom. And then from there, you can put the rooms however you like. The great thing about Agent Full 2022, the new version of this report, is that the rooms actually do show up in numerical order, which I have to say was not the case for a long time, and it was perplexing. But now they do show up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down through 9, and then they start over in the next row 10 through 18, I believe. So those are the correctable violations, and we've already talked about fines and that it can take about 4 weeks. So does anybody have any questions at this point about compliance? Okay. The last little bit I'm going to talk about on penalty before we move on to anything else is back to that temporarily off market and coming soon, the attachment of the addendums or addenda, excuse me. When you choose the document type, just make sure you're choosing CS addendum or TOM listing change notice. By choosing the correct document type, it does limit the visibility of that document. So only the listing agent, the broker, and MLS staff would be able to see those documents if they're attached correctly. There has been a little concern about that, what information you're giving out to everyone. So just know that too, please. We did kind of talk about some of the big fines, but I kind of skipped over these two. One is sharing login credentials. If you do not have your own login where you are literally signing in as yourself and then assuming someone else's identity, if you are logging in as another person, that is a violation. And I would need you to go to your agent, your broker, and say, I'm not supposed to be logging in as you. And if we get caught, it's a big fine. So we need to get me set up correctly. So just note that, and that goes for your credentials as well. If you have assistant credentials and they want you to share those with another assistant, that would also result in a large fine if that were to be discovered. So be aware of that. Please don't do that. And also the last one, this one causes some confusion. So we're going to talk about this, and any questions you have, throw them at me. Clear cooperation is a policy from National Association of Realtors that says within 1 business day of marketing a property for sale to the public, you have to have it in the MLS, your MLS, for cooperation with your other members. And when our MLS adopted that policy, they did actually do away with the rule they had before that, which was that you have to put it in within 48 hours of a signed listing agreement. We no longer have that rule. You can actually sit on a listing agreement for a year as long as your seller is okay with it and you have an active date that you're expecting in the future and you're not marketing the property. But as soon as a Facebook post goes up or a sign gets put in the yard, or the photographer decides that these pictures are great and they want to put them up on their marketing for whatever reason, it starts your clock. So just know it's 1 business day, which does mean if you put the sign up on Friday, you do technically have, Friday, if you put it up Friday afternoon, you technically have all weekend, but you best have it in on Monday when we go look, because it is $1,000 if you are marketing a property that's not in the MLS. This applies to residential properties only, does not apply to land. It only applies to properties that have a requirement to be entered. So I bring that up because if it is in a county that is outside of one of our primary counties, it is not a required entry. And currently, most new construction entries are also not required. So that is where you maybe see some of that carved out, that you might see some marketing where something is not in there yet. But if you see one, please report it to us if you like, and we will check it out, because obviously there's a reason this rule was put in place, and we want to make sure everybody's following it. So moving on to other topics. I do have a couple things in chat here. Let me make sure I'm not missing any questions. This recording may or may not be sent out, but I can look into that. There is a current recording of this class up on the har.realtor page under the education tab. I don't know that it's exactly the same because it would have been probably a year ago, but there is a recording there if you select live streams under the education tab. Little misleading because they're not live, but there are about 9 classes there, not just this one, that you may find valuable. Okay. And how do you ensure that MLS forms in .loop for a brokerage are up to date? For example, the MLS input needs to be updated. So we update ours in .loop. Anytime we update a form in Mls Documents, we send that form to .loop. Now, it takes them about a week, but they do get it up in our template folders. So if you're using a template folder that's separate from the Valley MLS or HAR templates, you would need to access our folders. I think the date of upload is visible to you in .loop, so you can see if it's different than the one you're using. I know for sure in Mls Documents inside of Paragon, you can see it. Let's hop over and look at that real quick. Inside of Paragon, if you're not aware, Mls Documents lives up here close to your name. And when you click on that, it brings open these folders. And these should be the same folders that you see inside of .loop. If you're not seeing these in your .loop templates, we may need to get you associated with Valley MLS. So again, send me an email. It's Tedessa TEDESA, like Teresa with a D instead of an R, at valleymls.com. And I'll send you what you need to get set up. That goes for your agent or your broker as well. For whatever reason, you're not seeing those. So when we look at our documents here, you can see the date saved shows up. For instance, these two broker load forms were just updated last week, and you can see those have been updated here. We have sent those to Dotloop. I don't know that they have been updated to Dotloop yet because it hasn't been a week yet. So we will hopefully have those up for you. But that's where you look, is in our folders inside of Dotloop. Or if you don't want to wait for that, come here to MLS Documents. You can download the PDF and you can upload it. It will not be a Dotloop fillable document at that point unless you make it one. But that is another option. So if you have a property you have not activated yet but receive a sight unseen offer, and that is accepted by the seller, how many days do you have to activate it in the MLS? That's a great question. There's a few moving parts here. So if you have a listing agreement on this property and you haven't yet marketed it, you're not violating anything to accept a sight unseen offer. A sight unseen offer can come from maybe your seller's neighbor knows that they're selling their house, or somebody from church or something like that. Nothing was marketed, but there are still people aware of it. And when you, sorry, another question popped up and I got distracted. So if people are aware of it and have made a sight unseen offer, then you absolutely have to present that offer, and your seller is obviously allowed to accept it. And if they do, you have some options, because to be honest, you don't ever have to enter it at this point. You can just let it go through its paces and be sold. But what we would love for you to do, and hope that you would do, is enter that listing within 3 days of a signed contract. And you wouldn't enter it as active per se, though you would have to start there. You'd enter it as active and hit save, and then you would immediately change it to pending or contingent with a projected closing date in the future. And you would then put in the remarks, sold before circulation, which means I had a listing agreement in place, but I hadn't actually put it in the MLS yet before I sold it, or before it was sold. So you'll put sold before circulation in the remarks. And then from that point forward, it's just a regular pending listing. If something were to fall apart with that contract, you can change your remarks, go back into an active status, and move on from there. But obviously everybody would hope it would just get closed out like normal. So I hope that answers your question. And if it doesn't, please let me know. Okay, and that question has been answered as well. So we'll just, she says she's good. All right, so my other topics are not specifically related to compliance, but again, if there are compliance issues that come up in these topics, we're going to touch on those. One is the data share. I don't know how familiar you all are with this. We did talk about that listing a minute ago, where the listing was coming from Greater Alabama MLS from Birmingham. We do have an FAQ sheet available if you have questions about that. The big thing to note is these are residential listings only. We're not sharing land or commercial or rentals. It is only residential listings. And the other thing that is tripping people up is the schools and the subdivisions. The way I showed you with the searches, the contains versus the equals field, because of the way this has to populate, also something weird happens when you enter a listing. You put in a subdivision, you put in your schools, you save your listing, you go to look at it. Let's say you're supposed to print that agent full off and show it to your broker or your agent. There's no subdivision on it. There are no schools on it. What? I know I put that in there. Well, of course you did. It wouldn't have let you save it if you hadn't. You go back and look, it's all there. Why isn't it doing it? You save it again, it's still not there. I get some frantic phone calls surrounding this. So please know it takes about 15 minutes for that data to populate to the report. And that is because it has to go to basically a clearinghouse, an exchange, if you will, and then come back. So if it's let you save it, you have it in there, just give it a few minutes and it will populate. The other thing to note here is when you're marking a listing as sold, I wonder if I could just grab one and pretend I'm going to mark it as sold. When you're marking a listing as sold and you're offered to enter an agent there for who sold it, the buyer's representative or the selling agent, as it were, and you start typing a name, it's going to offer you, unfortunately, the data share name first. So let's say I'm going to pick on Jerry. I don't know if he's in here, but my friend Jerry Burrell, he's in both systems. And if you were to just start typing and his name is in the system, both in both systems the same way, it's going to offer you 2 Jerry Burrells at the same company, and you'll most likely select the one at the top. Unfortunately, it will most likely be the wrong one because let's just see if we can do this here. Because it's going to offer you the data share listings first. And yes, this poor person will not know that we're messing with their listings, so don't worry. When we're down here and we're in the selling agent, I actually added the words buyer side here because we were getting a lot of people putting themselves in as the selling agent. Well, I sold it, right? Really what we mean is you listed it. Who was the other agent? And I would really encourage you to use this magnifying glass as the point of my story, because let me go back. Let's say I'm going to use Jerry as my example. Oh, it doesn't even want to let me use that now. You got to start with the first name. All right, so we've got Jerry Burrell here, and it isn't offering me to. I bet he's in as Gerald in the other one. However, it's going to offer me names here, and this is what most people are used to using. And it's tripping us up a little bit because if you're in both systems, people are checking the data share version of you, and it's not the right person. So again, it doesn't want to let me use the last name. Maybe I'm not spelling his last name right. Jerry, if you're in here, I'm sorry. So there's Jerry. You can see here it has manager. That means that's a member here. It actually means he's a broker. But we've got realtor, we've got manager, and then we've got data share participant. Data share participant, data share participant. And if you happen to choose a member with their data share participant person here, they won't get credit for the sale in our MLS. Oddly, they would get credit in the Birmingham MLS for that sale, but they wouldn't get credit here. So you want to make sure you're selecting the right one, and that was why I wanted to bring that up. Sorry to stumble over that a little bit. Let's see. Okay, answer that one too. So the searches we talked about already, the originating system ID, and the subdivisions and the elementary schools and those kind of things using the contains field instead of equals. The other thing is streets. I do think that they've moved to fix this, but for a long time, they didn't spell out words like road and lane. And so if you were to type in, Thompson Lane, LANE, it wouldn't bring their listing in because it was Thompson LN. And so again, when you're searching, sometimes less is more. If there's something you just know is in there and you can't find it, just know that if you drop some of those things off, maybe the more criteria you have, the fewer results you get. So if you have too few results, then you need to trim off some criteria and your results will grow. The other thing to remember about searches, I'm going to click back over to our residential search. There is a box called listing visibility type. Hopefully for you, there are 3 that are already locked in there. They should be MLS listings visible to all users. Please do not get that confused with MLS exclusive. MLS listings visible to all users. This is going to be almost everything. However, if when you go to send listings to your client, those listings include a coming soon listing or something that is new construction, you'll get an error because you didn't include the listing visibility type that would allow them to see that. So the other 2 listing visibility types you have to be aware of are construction, no DOM. You can see here also visible to all users. No DOM is exactly what it sounds like. They do not accumulate a days on market count in this listing visibility type. And they get a new construction listing gets to stay here through the proposed and under construction periods. As soon as the home is complete and marked new, never occupied, it bumps into just a regular MLS listing. But for now, for the ones that aren't complete, you want to include that. And then coming soon, no DOM, again, just like it sounds. If you want to send coming soon listings, that has to be in your visibility type. So lock those in there in your search, those 3, what we call LVTs. Do we have any questions about that? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about listing inputs. When we go up here and we're going to add a listing, a residential listing. One thing I want to point out, first of all, we have a price analysis up here now, which is brand new. You're probably going to get little pop-ups about this. I don't know a lot about it yet myself because it's brand new for me as well. But that's there, so note that. And then the tax autofill. If I know that this property exists in the tax record, it's not new construction, basically. I can click on CRS data tax autofill. I have to type in the county. And then I have to give it one other piece of information. You'll notice I have 0 results because I've only given it a county. But now I have to give it at least something else. So I don't know. I'm just picking stuff. I'm going to look for everybody in Madison County with the first name Rodney that owns something for whatever reason. That's all I know about my seller. And so I pull that up. And, oh, there it is. This is the one I want to list. This one in Tony. I'm just totally winging this right now. And what I'm going to do is click on that box, and then I'm going to click autofill up here at the top. It's going to give me an option. What do you want to bring over? I will note you cannot bring over square footage because we don't let you use square footage from tax records, but there are some pieces of information you may want to bring over, especially the parcel number. It's going to bring that over in exactly the right format. You don't have to worry about, doing anything special. You can uncheck or check whatever here you want. And then when you hit save, I think it's going to populate into our listing. Oh, it brought me into this maintenance instead. No, I don't want to save that. Well, that was fun. Why didn't it do that? I know why it didn't do it. It's kind of tedious to explain, but I had a listing maintenance screen open and therefore it wasn't going to let me save into this one, but I don't know why it did it like that. But anyway, so tax autofill is there, and that's all I wanted to show you was that that's how you utilize that. That does come from our CRS data tax software, if you will. It's also available up here under the tax button. You can start at tax autofill or you can go to tax search. I love this database. You can put in up to 4 counties in this box here. It does default to the last one you searched, and for me that was Jackson County. And if you wanted to look up those tax records, again, it's going to try to offer me things. First name, last name, street address, anything with Rodney in it. So let's just select this. We're picking on this poor guy here. And you'll see here, it's pulling in information from the MLS. If we had a listing currently, it would have photos here, just so you know. Right now, this is just a tax map, but it would be photos and a tax map if we had that. We're not getting a lot of property information just because this one doesn't have much, but it would be here from the tax record if you did. I want to point out the school zone information. This is not where you get school zone information. This is pulling from a third party called Precisely. It's the same company that HomeSnap and Zillow and Realtor.com are using to get their school zone information, or nearby schools, they sometimes call it. I wish they would change it here to nearby schools because it is not the school zone information. It is just Precisely's best guess. So please go to the district. If you do see that it varies, you can let us know and we can try to get it corrected. So I just wanted to point that out too. But you can see sales history here and some other information. This is going to be, again, 2 databases pulling together as well as some third-party information. They're trying to give you as much as they can. And at the very bottom, if you're feeling like what I'm looking at, especially if you're in an outlying county and you're feeling like what I'm looking at has to be really old, you can actually click on data currency and it will take you to this page here, and we'll show you every county and the last time they updated with us, which I just think is super cool. And also any page you're on, if you were to hit help, the help is going to be specific to that page. So, CRS is just a pretty cool and functional little tax resource there. So I've got a question here. Someone says, if we have a new construction spec home, can we activate it as proposed construction and market it without accumulating days on market? That's correct. If it is currently not being constructed, so you'll have to forgive my lack of understanding between what a spec home means. So I'm just going to define this out. Proposed construction means you have a lot for sale and you have at least one and possibly more than one house plans that your builder could build on that lot. You can list those as proposed construction. If the age and the construction status are both proposed construction, it will not accumulate days on market. However, you do have to put in what's called a projected completion date, which is no more than 12 months in the future. Honestly, the rules say it can't be more than 6 months in the future, but we could all just laugh at in our heads about how funny that is. Going from, dirt that's undeveloped to a house in 6 months is just not going to happen right now. So the system does allow for 12 months out, and we're just kind of letting that happen. Your expiration date on a proposed construction or under construction listing will hinge on the completion date. So if you put in a projected completion date, let's say of March 30th, then the system will default your expiration date to be April 14th, because it's going to go 14 days past your projected completion date. And people sometimes will notice that it's expiring and they get frustrated that it won't let them change the expiration date, when really it's the completion date way down in the property details that needs to be updated. So, and if you think about it, it makes sense. You told the computer, I have this house that isn't done yet, but it'll be done on March 30th. And then come March 30th, it's going, okay, well then your listing needs to expire because you either finished it or it's done, and you're not going to finish it. The listing is done. So please update that. But again, back to your proposed construction question, you can list it without days on market as proposed construction. Once construction has begun, we would ask you to change that to under construction, and it would stay in the under construction status, also no days on market, until it is actually complete. Once you receive that certificate of occupancy, it becomes new, never occupied. That is when those days start counting. However, if you're already under contract at that point, which I think that's probably a pretty good bet, then there will be no days on market, because days on market doesn't count while you're pending. So if you go pending while you're still under construction, you're going to see a lot of listings in there that have sold that were in there for a year with 0 days on market. So I hope that answers your question. All right. I'm going to bring up another screen share real quick for ListTrack. I don't know if you guys are using ListTrack. Well, before I do that, let me show you where to find it. I don't have any listings, so I had to do some screenshots of someone else's listings. But if you are working with an agent who has listings, then you would go to resources here at the top, and you'd hop down into ListTrack right there. But again, I can't do that, so I'm going to share with you, if I can find it. Here it is. This is what ListTrack data looks like. It's really cool. You'll actually probably notice now that Zillow is not listed separately, because Zillow did become a broker in our market, and they receive an IDX feed like all the other brokers do now. So IDX views will look way bigger, because a lot of those are going to be Zillow views. But you can see here the views, the inquiries. This person had gotten only one, but still we had an inquiry from HomeSnap. There are these great line graphs that show you the change, these different services, who's looking at it on what days, how many are seeing it, and kind of just some more performance and shares and things like that. You can also generate a seller report. This is not the seller's report, but you can hit right here where it says here, it's pushing on that or pointing to that. That would show you kind of a version of this that you could send to your seller if you were wanting to show them, like, yes, we haven't gotten a lot of showings, but a lot of people are looking at it. I mean, maybe we need to talk about price. Maybe we need to talk about, whatever it is that's keeping people from calling, because it's not that they aren't seeing it. It's just that they're not, just not generating interest. So what can we do? So this is just a great tool to have and be aware of. And I wanted to point that out so that you would have that. And really, that kind of brings me very close to the end of what I had planned for you here. I want to mention that we do have training and education resources available from your dashboard. Let me switch to that view. Over here with calendar of events, or register a class, register event, but especially calendar of events, you can click in here and see what all we have going on. The education classes here are blue. A lot of these Friday 10 a.m. classes are going to be like an hour, hour and a half. Some of those are the same things we have recorded on the har.realtor under the education live streams. But these are going to be the live version of those. If you want to attend via Zoom, some of them are going to be in person in Zoom. And whether this is for you or for your agent, again, if they come to you with questions, man, I wish I knew how to use dotloop a little better, or I don't understand why everybody loves HomeSnap, let them know that these resources are there, because they may not be aware of that. And brokers too. I mean, we would love to see brokers, you know, taking advantage of these things themselves, or utilizing these for their entire office. So yeah, we've got the Mike's classes here. A lot of these are we used to call them different things. So make mobile work for you, home staff on the go, close the deal, saving time from contract to closing. I want to say maybe the dot loop class, but because the names have changed, I'm not completely sure. I'm going to click on it. Yes. So you click on it to get more of a description, learn how dot loop can help you get the deal done. So please take advantage of these. We get a lot of great feedback. Mike's a great educator, and we hope you take advantage of that. I'm going to be sending you a resource guide. It's going to have a list of some other resources. If some of those things jump out at you as, hey, I don't know what that is or why that would be valuable, hit me up. Let me know how I can help. Things like dot loop, showing time, HomeSnap, the CRS tax data, Cloud CMA, the Collab Center. To be honest, I don't know a lot about Cloud CMA or the Collaboration Center, but I'll struggle through it with you, or I'll get you to the person who can help. RPR is another one I like to mention. I'm going to hop back to the dashboard and show you where that is. RPR is under quick links. You do have to have a NERDS number. So as an assistant, you would not be able to access this, but please make sure that your agent is aware, or if you yourself are licensed, you can access this using a NERDS number. And this is essentially a database of MLSs from around the country that are pulling together. So even aside from the data share we have with Birmingham, where we do have like guarantees of compensation and all that, this is separate from that. This is going to be just if, let's say, there's a listing in Coleman, we know those are a separate thing. Come here and look. It might be, I don't know if Coleman shares their MLS or not, but they probably do. So come into RPR and check it out. Also, even with our data share, again, it's only residential listings. RPR is not, as far as I know, limited only residential. I know land is there, but I don't know what
They
else.
can't hear me anyway. I turned my thing off.
We actually, we can hear you. I don't know who's speaking, but if you could mute, that'd be great. We are almost finished here. Again, just all these educational things. I'm going to send you some resources. Please let us know how we can help. That's what we're here for. I love talking to admin and agents and trying to solve the problems, and really want to help you do that. So kind of at the end, if there are any other questions, we can circle back to things.
Yeah,
or new topics.
I mean, there was none whatsoever.
We need to figure that out.
Huh.
Okay, I think I got it muted. I'm not sure. All right, well, thank you guys so much for being here. Again, I go by Teddy. My email though is tedessa@valleymls.com. You'll all be getting an email from me here shortly. So look out for that, and feel free to reply or give me a call, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But thanks so much for being here, you guys.
Thank you.
I hope you found it valuable. I know my voice held out, which is great, but I also did a whole lot of talking. So hopefully, hopefully it was good. The cat just now made her appearance. She waited until the end. That was nice.
You did awesome, Teddy. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Noah. Thanks for being here, you guys. Let me know if you have questions, okay?
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Appreciate it.